Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of the Cube in Focus podcast. I think this is the 8th, but I didn't upload the first episode to Spotify because it was just a pilot, so it really annoyed me that it started on episode 2 on Spotify, so I changed it all. So this is the second episode 7. But yeah, next episode will be episode 8. So, sorry it's been a big wait since the last episode. I was focusing on uploading to my YouTube channel instead and just taking a bit of a break as well. And I didn't really know who to get on. But after a bit of thinking, I decided it would be interesting to have somebody more related to the WCA organising of competitions. So in this episode, we have Clement.
Hello.
So
I see I get to be like the first episode, like Final Fantasy style with like giant renumberings that make everything confusing.
So Kit is a senior delegate in America, and he has delegated 88 competitions, which is the 10th most in the world.
Today I learned.
Pretty impressive. And he's been a delegate for around 7 years now. And, well, in terms of cubing accomplishments, from what I can see from his profile, his best accomplishment is getting second in fewest moves at US Nationals 2018.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's pretty cool. So, what have you been up to recently, Kit?
I have a lot of things really. My semester is, or I guess quarter is ending in school right now, so I've got a lot of finals stuff to grade right now. But cubing wise, I just started getting back into Twitch streaming, which a lot of people seem to be doing right now, which is cool. Because I definitely did it like a couple years ago more frequently, but the community just wasn't on Twitch. I think a lot of people just saw Twitch as like this gaming platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot more people on it recently.
For sure. It's been cool. I've really enjoyed at least in the one stream I've done so far, it's been a lot more enjoyable than in the past, just because there's a much bigger community there than there was in the past.
Yeah, I did quite a lot of streaming around this time last year, and I was always like the only person streaming for like the Rubik's Cube section, so I'd get all the viewers. But now there's like 5 people streaming.
But it's almost a good thing too, because like if you have even just a little bit of notability in the community, like you'll get people to host you when they're done streaming more frequently, and just when there are more consistent options in the Rubik's Cube category, like keeping it always on the following page, people are just more likely to regularly check it out to see like who is cubing.
Definitely. And all these online competitions, like cubing at home pulls in like 1,000 viewers usually, so that actually gets on to like near the top of the categories on Twitch as well. So that would definitely get a few viewers.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of people saying that they have like people who are just new to cubing entirely that are discovering cubing through Twitch.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, like there's some people that like I think Matt Dickman streams. I think he has a couple of people in chat that like discovered his channel because cubing at home existed, and then they started following the Rubik's Cube category. And they're just learning how to cube now because, you know, people are doing it on Twitch. So kind of a cool unintended side effect of that.
Yeah, maybe Twitch will become the new way of getting people into cubing.
Yeah, maybe. If we can keep this going. I mean, this is I've always said like for a while that Twitch is like by far the best opportunity if you want to be like a content creator for cubing. I mean that opportunity door is closing a little bit now, I think, but it's still much more wide open than trying to be like a YouTube content creator.
Yeah. Right. So online competitions, that's the first thing on my list that I've got here. So
awesome.
I heard you and Andrew talking about it on Layer by Layer podcast. So you've competed in a few of them now, haven't you?
Yeah, a couple of them.
And you've also done some talking on the Cubing at Home podcast as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Not the Cubing at Home podcast, the Cubing at Home stream.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting online competition podcast.
That'd be very strange.
All right.
So, yeah, what do you think about the whole thing? Do you think it's going to have like be relevant after the whole lockdown is over? Like once competitions are back up, or do you think it will just stop?
So I think to some extent it will continue to exist. I can't see online competitions going away. Just because like I think one thing that's happened with cubing at home too is that so many people who maybe didn't have the funds or the means of travel to go to competitions. Because, you know, for many people, there aren't any competitions that are just a reasonable distance from them, and it, you know, takes significant cost to get to one. And I think cubing at home and many other online competitions have sort of opened the door to cubers who haven't experienced competitive cubing before. And that's definitely a cool aspect of these competitions. That being said, I think there's just so much missing from these online competitions for those who like have been to WCA competitions before. So
definitely.
yeah, I envision this being some sort of like, you know, when we do sort of resume normal business, I assume there will be, you know, sort of like a happy medium between the two where you like, you know, cubing at home kind of style competitions help bring people into the competitive scene and encourage them to go to WCA competitions. And just also now, like how the WCA is sort of like also promoting these online competitions, I think they both kind of feed off each other in a way. And I don't think one has to necessarily replace the other in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. So we haven't really had many over here in the UK, but I think part of the reason for that is like everybody in the UK can like pretty much get to a competition like when they actually happen, because it's so UK is pretty small. Like the furthest you'd have to travel is like 7 hours, and like that's driving, so that's like the worst case scenario. So where in America it's definitely a lot longer than that for worst case
for
scenario.
sure.
Yeah, so I've competed in like a couple. I haven't been that into it, but it's definitely helpful for like competition nerves, because it's probably the best way of simulating actual nerves when you're at home, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually incredible. Like, I just don't get nervous in competitions at all anymore, for the most part. It's a setting that I'm so familiar with that it doesn't even feel like, you know, a high pressure setting just because of how often I do it. But when I was doing the Twisty Puzzle Cup, which is this other kind of West Coast based online competition, it's they do head-to-head matches almost the whole way through the thing after a qualifying round, that is. So it's kind of a more open, big bracket style competition. And I've been on stream a lot because I keep getting placed in the first round in like the middle seed match. Yeah. So, and they want to bring on the closest matches to stream. So I keep getting pulled on, and it took me like to the third match to not be nervous about being on stream. Even though, you know, it's only like, you know, maybe 40 people watching the TPC stream at most. Like, it's not like any different than being in like, in terms of how many people might be watching you in a competition room. You know, it just feels so different, and the setting is so different that like all my nerves I used to have about going to competitions just came flooding back. It was really weird.
I guess after being to so many competitions, it's just kind of normal, and you almost cube as much as competitions as you do at home. So
yeah, that was definitely the case for me in many events, for sure.
So, if you guys don't know, Kit Clement co-hosts the Layer by Layer podcast, which he's been doing with Andrew Nathanson for a few years now. So, I personally love listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I guess that's something also that I have been doing recently with my time. So, I guess I didn't feel comfortable shilling my own podcast on another podcast.
Yeah, they just kind of randomly chat about stuff, and it's pretty funny, and they also bring up interesting topics now and again.
Yeah, I would say that we're I wouldn't say it's in a dedicated cubing podcast. It's like a cubing podcast with us kind of just, you know, screwing around for a little while.
It's almost like cubing friendships I've had. Like, originally they're cubing, but now none of us like get on voice chat and cube together. We're all just playing video games, and we barely ever mention speed cubing at all.
Right. And I mean, this is the part of like online competitions that's missing to me, because I don't go to competitions primarily for the competition. I go for everything that surrounds the competition, where I get to see people that I enjoy being with and do stuff with them in person. But it is what it is. It's all we could do right now.
Yeah. So over your 7 years of delegating competitions, I'm sure you've helped organize some of the US nationals. Like, what's that experience been like organizing such a big competition?
You know how people get tired of organizing worlds and like
Yeah.
say they never want to do it again? Imagine being trapped in a hell where you're doing that every year. That's what it's like. Uh, so it's not quite as bad as Worlds. We have a bit more like autonomous control of nationals, which is nice.
Yeah.
Like Worlds, you have to like put in applications to the board and like deal with like communicating with like other organizations like the WCA, and Rubik's typically is like more involved in those. Although Rubik's has now been more involved in nationals, so that's kind of not a thing anymore. But
Yeah.
it's I think that we've had just a lot of scares where we don't have venues in time for when we want to make announcements. The
Yeah.
first year that I was an organizer for U.S. Nationals in 2015, I was trying hard to get a venue in Michigan where I was living at the time. And basically, I had like 3 or 4 options. All of them fell through.
Oh no.
Every single one. Just there were hidden costs that came up like way too late in the process, or the space that they said was promised, like part of it was reserved, or, like by another group, or I don't know, just like basically all of these options that I was looking at, pretty much every single one fell through.
Yeah.
And that was the year that we just started. We did all like a panic last minute search for basically anywhere in the U.S. And the best place that came up was Hilton Head Island.
Oh yeah.
Which turned out to be like, people say that have been going to nationals since then, say that's been their favorite U.S. nationals. Like
Well,
it's a
that's
pretty
cool.
common pick for that. So it worked out in the end, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a little stressful dealing with that.
Yeah,
The other
definitely.
stressful issue was just this past year in Baltimore. The convention center, basically, we had a sales rep that was basically taking an extended leave for a family emergency for like several weeks. And we were trying to contact them to, get a contract, get our dates like locked down. For weeks, and because nobody was responding to our emails, and our sales rep wasn't forwarding our emails to someone that could handle them, and because we had sat on our reserved dates for too long, they got released and someone else took them.
Oh no.
Yeah, like out of absolutely no fault of our own, like we just lost our dates at Baltimore, and we almost were like in January of the year of U.S. Nationals and just had no venue. Um, and we ended up working it out. Like they found space for us, and that's how we ended up having U.S. Nationals the same weekend as BronyCon.
So were they
So
the people that sniped it from you
no,
in the first
because
one?
we were planning on having it the weekend before BronyCon
Oh,
originally.
okay.
And basically what happened is it probably would have ended up okay if we did it that weekend, but I think it was like the city of Baltimore basically booked every side room in the entire convention center. So
That's
like we could
crazy.
get a main space, but we couldn't do any of the side room stuff, like no vendors, no long blind events or anything.
Yeah.
But the issue was is that the city of Baltimore, when we were talking to the event salespeople, they said like the city's probably not going to use all these rooms, but we can't guarantee anything.
Oh.
Like the city, if it just has like a relationship with the convention center where they can just like slap their name on any reservation for free and then like last minute release whatever they want, which wasn't going to
Yeah.
work with us. Like we couldn't deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, and it was clearly not our fault because we were trying for weeks to contact them on their general lines and on our sales rep's email, who just decided not to, even forward our email or anything. So, yeah, that was just a giant mess.
Well, at least it worked out, I guess.
Yeah, it worked out, and we got to cube with bronies. So, You know
So,
what? One year when we almost didn't have a nationals, we got to cube on the beach, which was cool. And then 4 years later, we got to cube with bronies. So all's well that ends well.
win-win.
Yeah.
So, out of all of the competitions you've helped delegate or organize, what would you say is like the worst thing that's happened? Like the biggest disaster?
Oh man, of all the competitions I've delegated, oh, that is tough. There's so many competitions that I've been to. Like I can think of one competition, but I'm not sure if I was a delegate for it.
Okay, that's fine. Just mention it anyway.
Okay. There was I would say this is probably the first competition that I went to, and I just felt like I didn't want to be at a competition anymore.
Yeah.
um, I don't know, like most competitions, you're so excited to be at, and like even if it isn't a great one, like you still would rather be there than not be there.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the first time I just felt like I didn't want to be physically present at this competition any longer. And it was Michigan 2016. I was the first Michigan comp I went back to, I think, since, well, I guess, no, it wasn't the first, but it was a competition in Michigan that I went back to after moving to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Basically it was like the summer state competition, and the year before it had, I think, 107 competitors, and then of course I leave, and then they do it again, and the next year they get 205.
Wow.
Yeah. So I basically left Michigan at just the right time to not have to deal with insane growth. But I don't know, basically the competition was just, I think that day one went until 11 p.m. or something ridiculous.
Wow. That's crazy.
Just, it ran so late just
when
because
was it
of how many...
scheduled to finish?
I'm pulling it up now. So I remember 5-line was what specifically took forever. And I mean, it was basically that they did a lot of the long events after dinner on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I think it was supposed to finish at 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
But it went on well past 11, and I just didn't get to do, even though I had time left in my cumulative limit for 5-blind, I just didn't do one of my solves. Because I wanted to do it, but they wouldn't let me, apparently. So I was like, well, I'm not the listed delegate, so I'm not going to argue, but this is stupid and whatever, I'm going to bed. So yeah, that was a fun time.
Sounds so fun. Yeah, the first competition I ever organized back in February 2019, with a few other friends, but they weren't as into organizing as I was. So on the first day, I'm pretty sure we had to get there at 8 or whatever, and the competition started at 9, and then we wanted 2 rounds of feet. Well, I wanted 2 rounds of feet at the very end of the Saturday. So we just chucked in an hour's worth of feet, so it made it run from 9 till 9, and I didn't sit down apart from competing the entire day. I was running around. God, it was it was very stressful and very tiring.
Yeah, totally.
But it was so much fun, and it made me want to
at
do
least
it
you're still
again.
having fun.
Yeah, it was a ridiculously long day, and luckily when we organised the same competition this year, we had a pretty easy schedule, so it was much more relaxed.
Yeah, I think the main problem was just that I don't know, 2015, 2016 or so was around the time when a lot of people started getting into long blind events. So in the past it was always you have a handful of people to do them, it'll take no time to get through them all. And then in 2016 there's 12 people doing 5-blind, you're like, oh, the hell, man.
Yeah, we've had I think it was last year at British Summer Open, which was our biggest competition that hasn't been a UK champs. And we had every event in 2 days, and there was 250, 300 competitors or something. And we had 2 groups for 4-blind of filling up both stages. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's crazy. Like I feel like around like 5 years ago is like when good resources finally got published for big blind events, and suddenly like tons of people got into them.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I can't remember when Noah posted his like four blind video because I think that was kind of what first sparked kind of like the big wave of you know people just casually doing big blind events.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I can't remember exactly.
Right. So if you like theoretically could change like any regulation or add a regulation or remove one, and everybody immediately knew what was going on, like what would you change?
Let logos happen in three blind.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's definitely one that would help.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one that I have significant regret over.
Yeah.
Because when I was leading the WRC, in 2014, one new thing that kind of popped up was this idea of overlay logos. Like Moyu cubes that were starting to come out around then for the first time, and I think Fengshi was also a big brand at the time too. And the way they were putting their logos on the cube is with a clear sticker on top of a normal sticker.
Yeah.
And that was sort of this new thing that it technically still was a logo and it fit within logo regulations, but it seemed like it was just way too obviously easy to detect if like you were in a blind solve. And it was sort of my goal on the WRC to try to come up with a way that we could eliminate, overlay stickers in blindfolded, because that's not hard to do. Like if you want to use the cube for blindfold, just take the overlay sticker off. It's not that hard. But what ended up happening is that you can't say overlay sticker without a clear definition of what an overlay sticker is. Because like especially because the regulations get translated into so many languages, like it's hard to communicate. You have to come up with like very specific and easy English sentences that will translate well into other languages, so that the regulations are consistent and applied the same way no matter what. So just saying no overlay stickers as a reg is not something you can write. So we had to come up with some way to encode this, and the best phrasing that we could come up with was that you can't, in blindfolded, you can't have logos that could be identified by feel. And it turns out that that's like, that made sense to us at the time, just because, that's a logo that you can clearly feel, compared to, just like a logo that's printed on the sticker directly. But what ended up happening is that, many delegates took that interpretation much further than I had intended when I wrote that regulation. And, so many logos were just, not allowed in blind because, like, they started scratching the sticker on the surface. And like been like, yep, I can feel it now. This is not a legal cube in blind. And it basically, de facto turned into the regulations we have now, where, every logo is not allowed because, you could theoretically feel them in some way. Like, even if they're printed on, like, there's ink on there that you could potentially feel.
Yeah, I seem to remember with the Rubik's and GAN cubes that they had at Worlds 2017, some of them you could feel the logo and some of them you couldn't. So, like, some were being disallowed for blind and then some of them were allowed. So people were really confused.
Yeah, like, just nothing made any sense. Worlds 2017, I remember, was when like the first time when like delegates came together and realized that we were interpreting that regulation wildly different ways. So yeah, it was kind of interesting.
I guess removing the regulation wouldn't really change anything, because the advantage you get from feeling it is almost like the advantage the reason why you couldn't use Stickerless Cubes like back in 2014. It's like such a small advantage that you're never really gonna use.
I'd argue it's less than letting people use Stickerless Cubes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Noah Arthurs did that video where he was basically able to do memo with like a card covering the face of a Stickerless cube, because like if the edges come to the edge in a very sharp 90-degree angle, not like rounded off in any way, you can basically see the color like leaking out on the edge of the other side
Yeah.
because it just comes right up to it. And so he didn't even need to look at the back face. He could literally cover it up with cardboard and memo the puzzle just fine. Didn't even need to do like elimination techniques to try to figure out what piece had to be in each position.
Yeah, when I was practicing Rescramble for Red Bull 2018, so I got really into that. I came third in Boston in the end, but I realized that Stickerless Cubes was so overpowered in it because you want to be able to like see as much as you can without having to move your head or move the cube. So I got into like moving my head around loads, but you can, on like a GTS 3 with the ridges as well, you can see like the back color just by looking down on it, which just like massively helped. And having stickers, you couldn't see any of that. So I definitely found Stickerless Cubes a lot better for that.
Man.
Ban Stickerless Cubes.
Yeah, let's go back to 2013. Man, that would if oh yeah, sorry,
go
ahead.
on. I was gonna say
okay. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say like like the whole manufacturing of puzzles has changed so much around like Stickerless Cubes being legal, like white cubes being gone.
Yeah.
Just everything moving to black and stickerless, and stickers being, I think I've like, so many like dedicated sticker shops have like shifted their focus from like WCA puzzles to just, cut like non-WCA like unofficial puzzles and stuff like that. If we went back to, stickered puzzles only, like that would absolutely like shock so much of like like cubing infrastructure in terms of like what is sold and what is being manufactured.
Yeah, it would be
awful.
Yeah, because I feel like everybody, because I used white cubes before Stickerless Cubes were available.
Same.
And then I just immediately switched to Stickerless. It's kind of weird how the people with white cubes switched to Stickerless and the people with black kind of sticked with black for a while.
Yeah, and then they shifted over eventually.
Yeah.
Or some of them did, at least.
I'm so glad I don't have a weird color scheme or sticker shades. Like that's the thing I'm so glad about. Like, well, you especially with your having to buy 2 cubes to get one you can actually use, or just having a purple side like James Malloy and having to wait for the purple stickers to come out so you can buy them and use the cube.
Yeah, that's. It's it was such a different world of cubing in 2008. Like, you literally, it didn't even matter what color scheme you used because any speed cube you bought back then came disassembled and unstickered.
Yeah.
So you had to assemble it yourself anyways. And if you were going to have to sticker it yourself, why not pick something unique? Like, that was my thought process at the time.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Right. And, now it's just, awful because like I don't know, like when they started like more commonly selling like assembled cubes and not DIY kits, I was like, can you just make it a DIY kit so I don't have to peel all the stickers off? It saves a step for me and you, but oh well. And now here we are today. So
yeah, I remember trying one of your 3x3s at Worlds last year and just being so confused. Like I'm like very color neutral. Like I do it on most puzzles, and I have been the entire time. But I still just have no idea what I'm doing. It's just so weird how it's just so ingrained in your head what you're used to, and just trying something different just completely throws you off.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I was gonna segue into like your thoughts on Red Bull competition since we were on that. Well.
Oh yeah.
Like, what are your whole thoughts on that, and do you see it going anywhere?
So I'm more optimistic about them than I was in the past. I think in the past it seemed like they were just very disconnected from the community and what was. I mean, no offense to Rescramble, but like Rescramble and I don't think they understood that Rescramble, like the best Rescramble competitors are just gonna be the best, like among usually the best blindfolded competitors.
I disagree.
Oh, do you okay, you disagree then?
I disagree. Although I did lose to one blinder. I blame it on the lighting, but I did lose to a blinder. Like, if you think the world class blinders, they got down to, they had like 18 seconds at the best. it's
Hmm.
very difficult to get faster than your blind times with like reverse blind for rescramble.
Right.
And with a few months of practice, probably 10k solves at most, I think I did, I got down to
Hmm.
21 seconds with CFOP, and I still had so much I could learn in terms of
Right.
algs just to get faster. And like Ricky Myler, he hadn't
Hmm.
learnt that much, and he was down to averaging 19. So that's
Hmm.
almost just as good as blinders are at free blind. So
That's fair.
theoretically, I mean, in terms of the first year, blind was probably better because they already had so much practice in it just from blind.
Right.
But
Yeah. They literally just had to like reshift how they applied their
yeah,
memo,
in
and
terms
it was
of
the same
yeah,
event.
in terms of the future, like if you give it a few more months blind and actually announce the competitions a lot beforehand and give people time to practice, blind's just going to
Hmm.
be obsolete and they're not going to get on the podium.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I guess yeah, because I didn't know. I guess I didn't have the perspective of a top
Yeah.
competitor to know like what the ceiling was for, the re-scramble event.
Personally, I reckon sub 15 is easy.
Yeah. Although a
I
lot of three blinders would say the same thing about three blind.
yeah.
At least they claim to say, at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it does make, yeah, when you say it now, it does make sense that direct solving probably is more efficient than doing direct
Yeah.
blind.
Although, like,
So,
you could be faster with reverse blind than blind because of just being able to see stuff. But then you'd have to completely change whatever you've learned for blind
right.
and just
Yeah.
like solve it. It just turns it into solving it with comms, but just not like doing the memo and then solving it with comms. Just solving as you like look at it as well. I guess that could be
Yeah.
fast, but the whole reverse blind, I don't think that's viable for the future.
Yeah,
At least.
one thing that I thought could have been an interesting like advancement in like the blind re-scramble is like doing your like, and I don't know how possible this is, but like, starting with just memoing edges, then start executing it while you're memoing corners.
Yeah, I guess that's feasible.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like too like if that's like like two simultaneous like processes that are just too hard for your brain to do well,
Yeah.
as good as you should. But I feel like that the fact that you can start executing before you finish memoing um, allows your blind times in a re-scramble context to potentially come down.
I feel like that could be something like when people do blind solves in 3x3 at competitions. I feel like that's
Hmm.
something that could easily be done there. But in terms of re-scramble, that's got to be so confusing, trying to trace the pieces back from when you're doing a com and then also figure out where those pieces have to go. I don't think that's actually possible.
Yeah, that's fair.
Something
So,
I did try with re-scramble is 4x4 re-scramble, and it was
mhm.
such a mind boggle because you do redux all fine, you do the edges, but 3x3 stage it's double re-scramble
Whoa.
because you're like doing the 3x3 stage while the pieces aren't solved, like the edges aren't solved as well. It was so
Hmm.
confusing, and I think I messed up parity or something. I need to try it again.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
I was
But anyways, with Red Bull comps,
yes, Red Bull competitions, not
yeah,
re-scramble.
yeah. Although that was a fun aside with Red Bull competitions. What I was trying to say with it is, like I thought it was kind of a weird choice to pick Rescramble because it's like I think that it kind of showed that they had a giant disconnect from the community. Because like anyone that would have talked to the community about a Rescramble event, like with the time frame they were giving people to practice and all of that, like someone could have literally told them like almost all your best competitors or many of your best competitors are just going to be blindfolded solvers that are doing their solve in reverse.
Yeah.
Like I think that could have been communicated and they might have either given more time to that event like or tried it a different year or something. I don't know. It just kind of to me showed that they didn't understand that or even try to reach out to the Cuban community in any way.
Yeah.
And there were many other ways that was apparent too. But it seems that has improved a lot, especially given the that Rubik's brand themselves is being a lot less hostile toward the community. in
Yeah.
recent years.
Yeah, they've recently announced loads more people that they're sponsoring with the Rubik's Ambassador thing. I just saw that earlier
Hmm.
today. They've got like Max Park and Patrick Ponce as well.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I didn't realize that that Rubik's was starting to sponsor cubers. So,
Yeah, that it's very new. Like George Scoley, our UK champion, he was sponsored like a few months back, but he was like the only one, and like the guy who makes mosaics and stuff like that. But now they've actually got a lot more people.
mm, gotcha.
Yeah,
Huh. Well, that's cool. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot more potential with Red Bull competitions in the future. I wonder what because like for it's been very unclear to sort of like WCA delegates, but like for a long time they were, trying to use WCA competitions as a mean for qualifying for the Red Bull competitions.
yeah, that
Um,
was a bit awkward because it was yeah like do it on the Friday before the competition, but then you have
mhm,
to have
mhm.
the venue booked, so you'd have to sort out the Red Bull stuff while you're sorting out the competition. And in the UK, we like plan our competitions like half a year in advance. So we already
Right.
had everything booked, so we couldn't book the Friday as well and sort it out. So we didn't have a qualifier, so it meant I couldn't go to the finals, which is a bit disappointing. But
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the whole qualifier from last season seemed really haphazard in that they were just basically relying on the WCA to run their qualifiers for them in a way.
yeah,
And they were
they
done
probably
in
lost
just
quite a lot of money from the first year with all of the venues they had to hire. Well, I think in the over here on the London qualifier they used a like Red Bull gaming venue they had. So
yeah. Yeah, they did that I think in a couple US locations too. I can't remember. It sounds familiar though.
yeah, it was quite funny. Me and James Malloy, we were into Fortnite at the time, so we got there a bit early and we played on the gaming PCs and got a Fortnite win just before the competition started.
Nice.
That was funny.
Uh, that's good stuff. Yeah, I think it would definitely would have been fun to go to one if there were one close to me at all when they were happening, but I definitely wasn't going to go out of my way to like travel to a Red Bull
Yeah,
competition.
that's fair
Would have been
enough.
cool to see what was, because it was just going to be, much higher quality production than a typical WCA competition for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, it was. Well,
Yeah.
my experience in the Boston finals was pretty good, although I was pretty nervous in the finals
Hmm.
with
Yeah,
well,
was there much of a crowd there at all, or did they
it
just
was
kind of
pretty
like
big
have?
actually.
Oh,
It was
really?
I mean it was nothing like a Worlds or a US finals, but there was people who like didn't actually cube who had just walked in and
No.
joined. Well, I
Hmm.
think I think it was announced around the city, so it was a decent crowd, and I mean lots of cameras like flying around on weird things.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Well, yeah, because the sense that I got of like the first Red Bull World Championship was like they wanted to basically do it and for the primary purpose of having promotional materials for the
Yeah,
future.
yeah,
Like that's generally the sense that I got is that that's what they were after.
yeah. Oh,
So,
funny story about the qualifier in London. So it was fastest hand in the knockout stage. I think it was semi-finals. No, it was for third place because they had prize money for third place for our London qualifier. I think it
okay.
was Nathan Azaria from Indonesia and who lives in the UK, or used to live here, and Daniel Shepherd. So they're like halfway through. Daniel's on PLL, and we have this really weird commentator who would just talk smack in like the middle of people's solves.
Oh God.
So Daniel gets the PLL, and the guy says, "Oh, is Nathan gonna be having shepherd's pie tonight?" And Daniel starts laughing. He messes up an F perm and he loses the solve, and Nathan wins.
Wow, that's awful.
Oh, it was so funny. Like in the rescramble finals, I was like 10 seconds faster than the guy I was facing, so I wasn't that nervous. But halfway through the solve, I just hear the guy saying, "Oh, is Chris gonna get that flight to Boston? I hope he's fine with an aisle seat," or something like that. It was so bad.
Yeah. Like I feel cubing is in many ways kind of like golf where it's like, why are you trying to like hype and talk through people solves. Like, save the hype for in between stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of it's such a quick event that like you any sort of like targeted talking or like distractions like that are just so,
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels pretty unfair, and very much like the announcer has a lot of control over what is going to happen.
It also definitely affects some people more than others. Like, it didn't affect me at all, but the guy I was against, he might have got distracted a lot more than I did.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, yeah, I don't know, maybe you can argue it to some extent, like, learn to live with the distractions or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems kind of weird to, considering that the general, status quo in cubing is just, either, ambient, just typical ambient noise or silence when competing.
Yeah.
But what do I know? I'm not producing anything for, content reasons, so.
Right, so before I got on this call, I asked James Malloy if he had any things I could bring up or hear. So you are a statistics professor, right?
I'm still a PhD student, but I did hold
Okay.
like faculty titles before as an instructor in statistics. So I don't know, it's not like totally false, but it's not totally true either.
Okay. Yeah, so he
Oh yes.
he asked me to ask you what is like the most interesting statistic you've like ever seen. He said like any statistic that just blew your mind or anything.
See, here's the thing that people don't get about statistics is like when you're knowledgeable about statistics, it doesn't mean you know random statistics facts. Like a lot of people when they hear the word statistics, they think of like, sports stats or like,
Yeah.
for cubers, like WCA stats and stuff like that, where, like when you know a lot about statistics, it means you know about a lot about like maximum likelihood functions and, least squares and, all these other techniques for, doing statistics theoretically. So I don't know. I mean, there's probably been a lot of really interesting statistics I've seen in my life, but that doesn't come to mind necessarily because of my role.
That's fair enough.
Someone who teaches statistics. Yeah, I don't know. I guess one thing that cubing wise recently that was mildly surprising is that I found was I think it was like the longest podium streak for a competitor in a specific event. That surprised me.
5x5, isn't it?
No, I think that was
not?
third place.
Oh wow. Is it Anthony Patarakis with 2x2?
Nope.
Oh, I don't know then.
Bensei 7x7.
Oh wow.
Yep. I was
How
like,
long is
what? It was, I think, like 80 comps.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of comps he just didn't have any competition in 7x7. Like, I think his streak went from his very first 7x7 comp, I think, to like Euro 16.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one, but I mean, the streak ran through many major comps too, and it finally ended, like I think in 2016. So yeah, I think that sounds right. But yeah, that surprised a lot of people because people think of, like Max Park or Felix in 3 or 5 or, something of that nature before they think of, Bensei in 7. So
definitely.
yeah, so that one was surprising when I saw that. I don't know if that's like the most surprising statistic I've ever seen in my life.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to me when I saw it.
Okay, Malloy also wanted to know if there's like a standout thing, like a stupidly dumb thing that a student of yours has ever done.
This happens like on a weekly basis. How do I pick? So, oh man. So when I was back at the University of Michigan, I was a TA or teaching assistant. I don't know if that's a term in the UK, but I was basically a graduate teaching assistant for our intro stat course, which taught like 2,000 plus students every term. And we did a lot to try to combat people who were, cheating the system and copying people's homeworks without really doing it themselves. So every week I would get an export, like just a gigantic Excel sheet of every student's answers to the homework questions that they were asked. And I would basically just run analyses on it for like similarity of responses. Usually like there were just like a surprising number of people that turned in like absolutely identical homeworks with the same typos and stuff like that. And it was like I remember some students just being so enraged and like strong in their belief that they were not cheating. And it's just like, dude, do you understand academic integrity in any way? I think those are the most infuriating moments, is when I have to deal with academic integrity issues. Like there was another time where at Portland State now, where I had like one student who like shared their homework with some other student in the class, like, and basically specifically told this person, don't copy, don't copy my answers, just look off of them to make sure you're doing things correctly. But then that student handed it off to a third person who just blatantly copied everything.
Yeah.
And
that's
like
unfortunate.
Yeah, so it was just like, okay. It was probably the most annoying situation I've had to deal with, because the student one was so adamant that they weren't cheating. And it's like, well, you shared your homework, so
yeah.
That it's in itself is a violation of academic integrity. Like, I know you had good intent in sharing it, but you still shouldn't do it, because this can happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was a very frustrating situation to deal with too, because it just took me forever to figure out what even happened, because I was just dealing with so many emails of students just like absolutely denying that they did it, except for the student that received it at the very end. He was like, "Yeah, I did it. I'm sorry. I didn't. I won't do it again." Like, so, but like these trying to figure out what happened in the middle was just like one of the most infuriating processes I've had to deal with. And it like almost just made me not want to ever like intentionally look for this stuff ever, and just only deal with it if I see it.
Yeah.
Because it's so infuriating to deal with these cases.
Yeah, fair enough. Well,
yeah.
I think that's a pretty good podcast. This is around the length I usually get to. So
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for joining me for this episode. It's been pretty fun talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Different discussions that we don't usually have with our other guests, but yeah, it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, it's been fun having being on the podcast. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yep, it was great to have you here. So hopefully I'll see you at a competition at some point, if they ever start again.
Worlds next year? ?
Yeah, wherever that's gonna be.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna be going. Got nothing better to do.
Yeah, I mean, if it happens, I'll be there.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do the next one, and I have no idea who I'm gonna have on next, but I'm sure I'll find someone. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I don't know, you can just like leave them in the YouTube comments. If you're listening to Spotify, you'll just have to go onto YouTube. But yeah, see you guys.